They made the chubby maid's daughter dance as a joke, regretted it after the first step. At Whitmore Academy's charity gala, where designer gowns cost more than cars and cruelty wore Chanel, Victoria Sterling thought she'd found the perfect target for entertainment. Maya Rodriguez, the scholarship student whose mother cleaned their classrooms, seemed like easy prey for a humiliation that would reinforce every social boundary money could buy. But when Victoria dared the chubby maid's daughter to dance as a joke, she had no idea she was about to witness a performance that would shatter every assumption about talent, grace, and who deserved to claim the spotlight. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply being extraordinary when the world expects you to be ordinary. The marble floors of Whitmore Academy gleamed under crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's annual salaries, their light reflecting off the designer gowns and tailored tuxedos of students whose trust funds exceeded small nations' budgets. The annual charity gala was the social event of the year, where 17-year-old billionaires mingled with political dynasties and entertainment royalty, their conversations flowing between vacation homes in the Hamptons and upcoming debuts at exclusive country clubs. Victoria Sterling, daughter of tech mogul Richard Sterling, held court in the center of the ballroom, wearing a $50,000 custom Valentino dress, her perfectly sculpted features radiating the casual cruelty that came from never having experienced consequences for her actions. Her inner circle of equally privileged disciples hung on her every word, their laughter sharp and predatory as they surveyed the room for entertainment that would elevate their social media engagement and reinforce their position at the top of the Academy's ruthless hierarchy. In the corner of the ballroom, 15-year-old Maya Rodriguez adjusted her mother's work uniform for the 100th time that evening, the polyester fabric chafing against her skin as she helped serve champagne to teenagers whose monthly allowances exceeded her family's yearly income. Her mother Carmen worked as the head of housekeeping at Whitmore Academy, a position that had earned Maya a scholarship to attend the prestigious school, but also marked her as different in ways that made her a constant target for the casual cruelty of her classmates. Maya's curves, inherited from her Latina heritage and accentuated by her inability to afford the designer clothes that camouflaged wealth, made her stand out in a world where thinness was currency and conformity was armor. She moved through the ballroom like a ghost, invisible to most, but hyper-visible to those who enjoyed reminding her that she didn't belong in their rarefied atmosphere. The scholarship students at Whitmore learned early to make themselves small, to speak only when spoken to accept their role as grateful recipients of an education they could never truly afford. Maya had mastered this dance of diminishment over her 3 years at the Academy, but tonight felt different, charged with the kind of electricity that preceded either breakthrough or breakdown. Her mother worked double shifts to supplement their income, cleaning the very rooms where Maya attended classes, creating a constant reminder of the economic chasm that separated her from her classmates. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that she studied literature and philosophy in spaces her mother sanitized before dawn, that her education was literally built on her family's invisible labor. Victoria's eyes had been tracking Maya throughout the evening, waiting for the perfect moment to provide entertainment for her followers and remind everyone present of the natural order that placed sterling wealth at the apex of their social ecosystem. The charity gala's theme, celebrating hidden talents, provided the perfect opportunity for the kind of humiliation that would reinforce social boundaries while appearing to offer inclusion. As the evening reached its peak and phones emerged to capture content for social media, Victoria approached Maya with the predatory grace of someone who had learned that power was most effective when wielded with a smile. The moment that would define both their futures was about to unfold on a dance floor that had never seen anyone like Maya dare to claim its center. "Maya, darling." Victoria's voice dripped with the kind of false sweetness that preceded public humiliation, her tone calibrated to sound generous, while her eyes promised something far more sinister. The ballroom's conversations seemed to pause as Victoria's inner circle materialized around Maya like well-dressed vultures, their phones already positioned to capture whatever entertainment their queen was about to provide. We were just talking about how this gala is supposed to celebrate hidden talents, and we realized we've never seen you participate in any of our school's cultural events. Surely someone with your background must have some kind of talent to share with us. The word background was loaded with implications about class, ethnicity, and economic status, delivered with the surgical precision of someone who had weaponized privilege into an art form. Maya felt the familiar flush of humiliation creep up her neck as dozens of eyes turned toward her, their gazes ranging from curious to openly hostile as they waited to see how the scholarship girl would respond to being put on the spot. Her mother's uniform suddenly felt heavier, marking her as service rather than served, reminding everyone present that she existed in their world only through charity and circumstance. "I don't really perform," Maya replied quietly, her voice barely audible above the chamber quartet that provided the evening's background music. She tried to step backward, seeking escape in the shadows where she'd learned to find safety, but Victoria's circle had closed around her like a trap designed to keep prey from fleeing. "Oh, but that's such a shame," Victoria continued, her voice rising just enough to ensure that nearby conversations would pause to listen. "I mean, everyone knows that people from your community are naturally gifted dancers. It's almost genetic, isn't it? Surely you must know how to salsa or merengue or one of those ethnic dances." The racial undertones were unmistakable, designed to reduce Maya to a stereotype while providing Victoria with plausible deniability if anyone accused her of overt racism. The gathered crowd began to murmur with anticipation, sensing that they were about to witness either entertainment or a social execution, both of which provided excellent content for their social media feeds. Maya's silence seemed to embolden Victoria, who turned to address the growing audience with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Come on, everyone, let's encourage Maya to share her culture with us. I'm sure she's just being modest." The applause that followed was the kind of slow, sarcastic clapping that turned encouragement into mockery, each clap designed to increase pressure rather than provide support. Victoria's final move was masterful in its cruelty. She gestured toward the dance floor with theatrical generosity, while her expression made it clear that refusing would be interpreted as confirmation of Maya's status as an outsider who couldn't contribute to their community's cultural life. The trap was perfect, offering the illusion of choice while making only one option socially survivable. Maya stood frozen in the center of the circling crowd, her mind racing through calculations that had nothing to do with mathematics and everything to do with survival in an environment designed to crush anyone who didn't fit its narrow definitions of acceptability. She could feel her mother's presence somewhere in the room, probably refilling champagne glasses or clearing plates, unaware that her daughter was being set up for the kind of public humiliation that would follow them both for the rest of their time at Whitmore Academy. The whispered conversations around her carried fragments of cruel anticipation. Bets about whether she would run away crying, speculation about how badly she would embarrass herself, commentary about whether scholarship students should even be allowed at events like this. The chamber quartet's music seemed to slow and distort as Maya's heart pounded against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. Every instinct told her to flee, to find her mother and explain that they needed to leave immediately before the humiliation became too great to bear. But something else stirred in her chest, a memory of her grandmother teaching her to dance in their tiny apartment kitchen, the old woman's voice explaining that movement was prayer, that rhythm was resistance, that grace under pressure was the ultimate form of dignity. "Mija," her grandmother had said, "they can take away our money, our opportunities, even our language, but they cannot take away the music in our souls." Victoria's smirk widened as Maya's silence stretched into what everyone assumed was confirmation of her inadequacy. But something in the scholarship girl's posture began to shift in ways that only someone trained to read body language would recognize. Maya's shoulders straightened with a pride that had nothing to do with wealth or status and everything to do with heritage and identity that ran deeper than any trust fund. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind as she made a decision that would redefine everyone's understanding of what it meant to have talent, grace, and power. The dance floor stretched before her like a stage where she could either confirm every stereotype or shatter every assumption that had been made about who she was and what she was capable of. As Maya took her first step toward the center of the ballroom, the conversations around her began to die away, replaced by the kind of anticipatory silence that preceded either disaster or revelation. Victoria's expression remained confident, but something in Maya's movement, a fluidity that spoke of training and practice rather than amateur enthusiasm, caused the first flicker of uncertainty to cross her perfectly made-up features. The phones that had been raised to capture humiliation remained recording, but their operators began to sense that they might be documenting something entirely different than what they had expected. Maya reached the center of the dance floor and paused, her eyes closing as she centered herself in the way her grandmother had taught her, preparing to transform cruelty into art and humiliation into triumph. The transformation began before Maya even moved, her stillness commanding attention in a way that Victoria's manufactured drama never could. When she finally took that first step, it wasn't the awkward stumbling that the crowd had expected from someone they dismissed as clumsy and unrefined. It was pure poetry in motion, her body flowing like water given form and purpose. The step was a classical ballet move, executed with the precision of someone who had trained for years in studios her classmates didn't even know existed, practiced in community centers and church basements where excellence was pursued without the luxury of private instructors or state-of-the-art facilities. The gasps that followed weren't mockery, but genuine shock as the crowd realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Maya's second movement built on the first, incorporating elements of contemporary dance that showcased not just technical skill, but emotional depth that most of her classmates had never experienced despite their expensive educations. Her body told a story of struggle and triumph, of dreams deferred but never abandoned, of beauty that existed independent of wealth or social approval. The chamber quartet, sensing the shift in the room's energy, began to adjust their playing to match her rhythm, their classical training recognizing artistic excellence regardless of its source or setting. Victoria's confident smirk faded into open-mouthed shock as she realized that her attempt at humiliation had instead provided Maya with a platform to demonstrate talents that made every trust fund in the room seem inadequate by comparison. The audience's phones continued recording, but the nature of what they were capturing had fundamentally changed from anticipated mockery to unprecedented artistry. Maya's movements grew more complex and confident with each passing second, incorporating elements of her Latin heritage that transformed the stuffy ballroom into a celebration of cultural richness that most of her classmates had never been exposed to despite their supposed sophistication. Her curves, which had been a source of cruel commentary, became assets that allowed her to express emotion and grace in ways that the angular bodies of her undernourished classmates never could. The scholarship girl they had dismissed as inferior was revealing herself to be more cultured, more talented, and more genuinely sophisticated than any of them. As Maya's performance reached its crescendo, the ballroom fell into complete silence except for the quartet's music and the whisper of her movements across the marble floor. Victoria found herself backing away from the dance floor, her position as social queen suddenly seeming precarious in the face of Maya's undeniable excellence. The crowd that had gathered to witness humiliation instead found themselves witnessing a masterclass in dignity, grace, and the kind of authentic talent that couldn't be purchased with any amount of money. Maya's first step had promised transformation, but none of them had anticipated that it would transform not just the evening, but their entire understanding of who deserved respect and admiration in their carefully constructed world. The video began spreading across social media platforms before Maya had even finished her performance. The hashtag #MayaMagic trending within hours as viewers around the world watched a teenage girl transform cruelty into art with breathtaking grace. The original intention, to humiliate a scholarship student, was lost as the footage showcased not just Maya's incredible talent, but the stark contrast between her dignity and Victoria's obvious cruelty. Comments poured in from professional dancers, choreographers, and arts educators who recognized the level of training and natural ability required to perform with such emotional depth and technical precision. The story became bigger than just a high school conflict, evolving into a conversation about class prejudice, hidden talent, and the assumptions society makes about worth based on economic status. Victoria's social media accounts, once filled with adoring comments from followers who envied her lifestyle, became battlegrounds where her cruelty was dissected and criticized by viewers who had witnessed her attempt to humiliate Maya. The very phones that had been raised to capture expected embarrassment had instead documented Victoria's exposure as someone whose wealth couldn't disguise her fundamental lack of character or talent. Screenshots of her sneering expression circulated alongside images of Maya's graceful movement, creating a visual narrative that needed no explanation. The girl who had thought she was directing the evening's entertainment discovered that she had instead cast herself as the villain in a story that would follow her for years to come. Maya's mother, Carmen, watched the video from the staff break room, tears streaming down her face as she realized that her daughter had not only survived Victoria's attack, but had transformed it into something beautiful and powerful. The housekeeping uniform that had marked Carmen as invisible suddenly seemed like armor worn by the mother of a warrior, someone who had raised a daughter capable of facing down privilege with grace and strength. Phone calls began pouring in from dance companies, scholarship programs, and art schools that had seen the viral video and recognized Maya's extraordinary potential. The girl who had been mocked for her background was suddenly being celebrated for the very qualities that made her different from her privileged classmates. The story continued to evolve as news outlets picked up the video, turning Maya's moment of triumph into a broader conversation about educational equity and the hidden talents that existed in communities that society often overlooked. Victoria's attempt to reinforce social hierarchies had instead created a moment that challenged them, inspiring other students from disadvantaged backgrounds to share their own stories of excellence achieved despite limited resources. The dance that was supposed to last a few humiliating minutes had become a cultural phenomenon that would influence policy discussions about arts education funding and access to opportunities for underserved communities. 6 months after that fateful evening, Maya Rodriguez stood in the wings of Lincoln Center. Her scholarship to the American Ballet Theater's summer intensive program representing just one of dozens of opportunities that had emerged from her viral moment of triumph. Her mother, Carmen, watched from the audience, no longer wearing a housekeeping uniform, but dressed in her finest clothes as an honored guest at her daughter's debut performance. The transformation in their circumstances had been swift and dramatic. Corporate sponsorships, scholarship funds, and speaking engagements had lifted them out of poverty, while Maya's talent had opened doors that wealth alone couldn't access. But the most significant change was in how Maya carried herself, no longer apologizing for her presence in elite spaces, but claiming them with the confidence of someone who understood that talent was the ultimate equalizer. Victoria Sterling had undergone her own transformation, though hers was far less voluntary and infinitely more painful. The viral video had cost her more than social media followers. College admissions officers had seen the footage, internship programs had withdrawn offers, and even her father's business associates had begun questioning the values being instilled in the next generation of their social class. The cruelty that had once made her feel powerful now marked her as someone to be avoided, a cautionary tale about the dangers of privilege unchecked by empathy or wisdom. Her parents had enrolled her in community service programs and cultural sensitivity training, desperate attempts to rehabilitate an image that had been permanently damaged by 60 seconds of documented callousness. The ripple effects of Maya's performance extended far beyond individual lives, inspiring policy changes at Whitmore Academy and similar institutions across the country. The school's administration, embarrassed by the viral exposure of the toxic culture they had allowed to flourish, implemented new programs designed to celebrate diversity and prevent the kind of systematic bullying that had targeted scholarship students for years. Maya was invited to serve on the Student Diversity Committee, her voice carrying weight that had nothing to do with her family's economic status and everything to do with her demonstrated character and talent. The girl who had once hidden in shadows now illuminated the spaces she entered, her presence a reminder that excellence could emerge from any background. The dance that had begun as an attempt at humiliation had evolved into a movement that touched lives across multiple continents, inspiring young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue their dreams despite societal barriers. Maya's story became a case study in business schools about the power of authentic talent over manufactured privilege, and her performance was analyzed in sociology courses as an example of how individuals could challenge and transform oppressive systems through courage and grace. The first step that had shocked a ballroom full of privileged teenagers had become the beginning of a journey that would influence educational policy, social attitudes, and the dreams of countless young people who had been told they didn't belong in spaces where excellence was supposed to be reserved for the wealthy. Maya's dance transformed cruelty into art and prejudice into opportunity, proving that true talent recognizes no social boundaries. Victoria learned that wealth without character is just expensive emptiness, while Maya discovered that excellence is the ultimate form of dignity. In a world that judges worth by bank accounts, how many hidden talents are we overlooking simply because they don't come wrapped in privilege?